Dear men, do better. Welcome to the But I Don't Know podcast, the podcast made by two men. My name is John.
You assume my gender. No, I'm joking. My name is JP.
It's so great of you to join us in this episode of the But I Don't Know podcast, the title of which is Dear Men, Do Better. We'll dig into that in a moment. But firstly, we want to remind you that we have a website, www.dunocast.co.za. That's www.dunocast.co.za. We don't update that website nearly as much as we should and nearly as much as we want to. But you will find all our podcast episodes on there, which is pretty cool in itself. There's a couple of blogs from yesteryear. And
Literally yesteryear.
Yeah. And there's some merch. There's a merch page. If you browse around /merch on that URL, then you'll find our merch page.
Buy that
You
merch.
can buy some merch.
Buy that merch. Buy that merch. Buy that merch. I think that's a Logan Paul.
Oh, really? We're going to
he did
get
it.
copyright flagged now.
Buy that merch.
Logan Paul's going to claim the revenue from our video. It's fantastic.
You see, it's funny because we don't have any revenue from this video.
Yeah, he's going to make an extra 0 cents on his video.
Thanks for
I'm not too
explaining.
sure why the video keeps going super bright like that. Do you see that? It's like
If I move.
the
Buy that
rapture's
merch.
happening.
Yeah.
Anyway, go check out our website. It's pretty cool. We like it. We'd love to update it sometime when we've got the time and the resources and the energy. But for now, go check it out anyway. We are on the socials. We're also not nearly as active on there as we'd like to be. But our most important content is the content you're currently listening to.
Mm-hmm.
This is why we do what we do. I mean, all the other stuff is an aid of this moment
Yes.
right here.
Yes.
You, our dear listener, listening to our suave voices over your earphones or wherever you're listening.
This just turned into an ASMR podcast.
All of a sudden,
How are you doing, fellow listeners?
fellow listeners, that's hilarious. Anyway, so yeah, thank you guys for joining. Let's jump into the content of today's episode and stop talking rubbish.
I can't promise anything, but sure, let's do it.
So the inspiration for today's episode is actually, once again, for those of you who don't know, JP's usually the guy who comes up with the ideas of what we talk about. I try, and I just suck at it. And then we kind of bounce the ideas back and forth, and JP's usually the one who, gets the thing, you know? And so this week, JP discovered some interesting information that he wishes to share with us.
Oh, yes, it's a very big secret.
Nobody knows this.
Nobody knows
You
this.
heard it here first.
This is breaking news.
Breaking news.
There's been a I don't want to use this word, but there's been another quote unquote controversy.
Yes, and don't forget to talk into your microphone.
There's been another controversy in the church.
Another one?
Another one.
God.
So, what's his name? Another one? What's his name?
I have no idea what you're referencing right now.
You people know. Give a comment. What's the guy's name? Another one.
Yeah, continue.
Anyway, I can't believe you don't. Okay, anyway. Another mega church pastor. What are
Yeah.
you doing? Bro, I'm speaking to them. Stop.
I know.
Stop it.
Continue.
Another mega church pastor has fallen from grace.
You know, this grace thing
Yes.
is quite a thing to fall from.
It's these mega church pastors, bro.
You know,
These prosperity preachers.
somebody needs to get a handle on them.
Exactly. You know, it's this, this very famous prosperity. I just spat all over your table. I'm so sorry. Anyway, it's this very famous prosperity preacher called Matt Chandler.
Oh, that prosperity
that
preacher.
prosperity,
Sure.
that mega church pastor.
Okay, well, give us the tea, bro.
Anyway.
Give us the tea. The breaking news.
It's For those of you who don't know who Matt Chandler is, he's not a prosperity preacher.
Yeah.
He is reformed, but he's also like, charismatic. He's a charismatic reformer. He's like,
he must labeled himself something like that.
yeah,
at some point.
something. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I like his stuff. I've seen some of his sermons, and I'm like, this guy knows what he's talking about. I don't agree with everything he says.
I mean, you don't agree with everything I say, which
I don't
means
agree
that there's
with
a problem.
I don't agree with everything I say. So it's okay.
Hard facts, bro. Welcome to the But I Don't Know podcast.
He's a reformed preacher. He is a mega church pastor. Like, their church is massive.
Yeah, sure.
But there's a controversy, I guess, concerning him, that he's been messaging privately with a woman who's not his wife.
Dun, dun, dun,
Yeah, but the thing is, I love it because if you just Google Matt Chandler, you'll see very sensational headpieces and titles like another pastor
falls from grace. We might be guilty to contributing to the sensationalism.
I did that a little bit on purpose. Because the moment I said mega church pastor fell from grace, everyone thought, it's like Benny Hinn or someone.
Stephen Furtick.
We're
all just waiting for him.
We're
just waiting.
Another Hillsong. Yeah, but anyway. What's important in this case is that it's different than the other cases.
Yeah.
It's not. It's a weird situation.
Yeah.
Because I've got the statement opened here.
Yeah.
Right.
For those of you who are wondering, the statement is available online, but JP took quite a while to find the actual statement.
This is the most difficult statement from a church elder board to find in the history of all church statements.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's just me or if they've hidden it so it's what?
Yeah.
Anyway. So this is the part of the statement that I want to read that distinguishes this case from all the other, like the Hillsong scandal and, like all the scandals that you would think of when it comes to infidelity in the church.
Yeah.
So the elders from the village church said the following. He said, "We are strong proponents of brothers and sisters in Christ being friends, but there are boundaries around what's appropriate in these kinds of friendships. A pastoral role requires a greater awareness of those boundaries. In this case, while the messages were not romantic or sexual in nature, the frequency and familiarity of the messages crossed the line. They revealed that Matt did not use language appropriate for a pastor and that he did not model a behavior that we expect from him."
So basically, their statement is he did not cheat on his wife, but he didn't act like a pastor.
Yeah.
Or an elder.
He used language that's not appropriate for a pastor.
Yeah. Oh, flip.
Oh, frick.
I think we both just disqualified ourselves, JB.
Flippity-doo-dah.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a very interesting statement. So before the time, JP and I were just chatting, and he read me the statement and that, and it does seem like JP said. It seems a little bit vague. Like they don't really give much detail as to what their actual standards are in particular, and they're not obligated to give us those details. I guess my assumption is that if you searched hard enough, but judging by how hard it was to find the statement, this might be difficult, but if you searched hard enough, you might find their code of conduct somewhere. Something's sounding a bit weird on the podcast. I apologize if it sounds a bit weird. Your guys' side, it is what it is. So yeah, it's a little bit weird, but I totally understand why they are taking the stance they're taking, in the sense of we believe in standards as Christians. We've got standards. I hope.
What?
And our standards are somewhat rigid in certain cases. When we read the scripture, God's pretty clear about certain things. And actually, we usually complain the exact opposite direction. We complain that people, churches or senior pastors or whatever, aren't keeping to the standards. And so in an attempt for them to hold fast to what they consider important and integral, they've made this decision. And I think it's really honorable. I think it's noble. You know?
Yeah, look, I think that there's a sort of a viral video from the Village Church as well, where Matt Chandler himself actually addressed the situation.
Yeah.
And it is what he says. It's like when because basically the timeline is also important here. A few months ago, basically what happened, how this came to light, is there was another woman in the congregation that approached Matt after service, I assume.
Yeah.
And she raised concerns because he was speaking to her friend on Instagram. And he immediately, and this is what's commendable about this. Now, there's a debate going around why he did it, what's his motivations and stuff. But what is commendable nonetheless is immediately he went to the elders of the church and said, listen, this woman raised concerns. He didn't think that he did anything wrong, but he would like the elders to look into it and to see if there indeed is something that's concerning.
Yeah.
And it turns out that, he was speaking to another woman. Now, according to Matt, his wife knew about this.
Yeah.
Her husband knew about this. So it wasn't done in secret. But like the statement said, the problem or the concern that the elders raised was the frequency of the conversations and the familiarity of the conversations. In other words, the type of conversations that they had, and basically they spoke every single day.
Sure.
Which is, and I can understand, like, I'm not married, you're married, Yeah. If you were to find out that your wife was speaking to another guy as friends every single day,
I'd nip it in the bud.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So it's for me, it's quite understandable why the elders acted, because like he also said, it would have been easy to make this nothing.
Yeah.
Because no, I would say, quote unquote, wrongdoing has taken place. But it was, as he said, unguarded and unwise.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the thing.
Yeah. And therein lies sort of my reason for wanting to title the episode the way we did. I think it should be obvious for us, especially as the church. Now, obviously, a lot of our episodes are very blatantly targeted to the church and to Christians and stuff like that. But we do hope that some people listen to these episodes that aren't Christians. That's really our hope. We want to engage in the dialogue. But especially within the church context, we shouldn't consider the stance that church has taken and that Matt Chandler has taken. Chandelier. We shouldn't consider it foreign, in the sense of the Bible says we should be above reproach. And unfortunately for us, we live in a time where it's somewhat common for senior leaders to be accused, at least, of sexual misconduct.
Yeah.
In some capacity. And this, basically what I want to say is, I want to say that our bar should be set at a bar of purity and righteousness. That should be the bar. And anything that falls under that bar, we should be willing to discuss it. We should be willing to put it on the table and talk about it and call it what it is, The Bible says we should flee from sin, which for those of you who don't know, the word flee means to run away. In fact, some translations might say literally that same thing.
Run away.
Yeah, like the Message maybe. The Message might be like, stroll away with haste.
Stroll away.
remove yourself at first easiest convenience.
Step into your safe space.
No offense, Eugene.
What? Okay, yeah, I was confused for a moment. But okay.
So yeah, we should have this super duper high standard that we hold to, and we should realize obviously that most of us, which is going to be a bit of another topic that I want to discuss in a moment, most of us are going to fall short of the standards that even we hold just within our churches. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't hold those standards. The worst logic for me is, sorry, I'm hearing those sounds again on my earphones, and I hope it's not going through to the recording because it's very distracting.
You're hearing sounds and voices in your head.
The worst argument for me is just because nobody can keep this standard, we should compromise on it. It's like arguing and saying, there's no men in our community who haven't been divorced. So we're gonna compromise on that qualification for elders because nobody meets the standard. So we're going to compromise. Now, don't get me wrong. If your church compromises on the standard for elders for some other reason, I'm not here to debate that. Just go read the Bible is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
But the point for me is the reason for compromise should never be, oh no, but nobody's going to be able to live up to that. We should still have that standard in place and then have a process of grace and a process of discipline, which is described to us somewhat in Matthew 18. And we shouldn't be shocked, firstly, if people fall short of that standard. And we shouldn't be shocked if other people call them out for it.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, look, the Bible is clear, and in a world that I believe is a world governed by absolute truth.
Yeah.
You can't compromise on a moral absolute.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
By definition, you can't compromise on a moral absolute. You either meet the standard or you don't. And if you don't meet the standard, then you just don't meet the standard. There's
Now, to be clear, this isn't us saying Matt doesn't meet the standard. We don't get to make that call, you know? And I think his leadership is doing a great job at trying to navigate this and be as gracious as possible, but yet trying to stick to the absolute moral standard they believe in. And it might seem a bit heavy-handed to some of us. Some of us might be like, yo, guys, couldn't you have dealt with this sort of in counseling sessions or something?
He just spoke to us.
This is what we should be seeing in churches. We shouldn't let it happen until it ends in adultery, if you hear what I'm saying. The worst case scenario here was that they didn't address it, and then it ended up in adultery.
In full blown.
I'm not too sure what's going on with that camera. We've got some technical issues here today. It's so exciting.
I want to read the scripture that they they quote in the statement. I wanted to use a physical Bible, but you see, John, this is a study Bible, and for some reason, there's more study than Bible in it. Like if you can see, there's Bible, there's the Bible.
And there's study.
And there's the study.
What happens here is these people who wrote this study are trying very hard to convince people that these words here don't actually mean what they say they mean.
And you've got pictures. Look at that.
And there's pictures in my Bible. Anyways.
So I'm just going to go from my cell phone. So if anyone asks, this is why. Because I don't want to read. I don't want to read like this. And then there was 4, and then 2, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Okay, let's get to the point.
Okay. So In First Timothy, this is the scripture that they quote in the statement.
Yes.
He says the following. He says, the saying is trustworthy. If anyone aspires to office of overseer, he desires a noble task. Therefore, an overseer must be above reproach, the husband of one wife, sober-minded, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not a drunkard, not violent, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. He must manage his own household well with all dignity, keeping his children submissive. For if someone does not know how to manage his own household, how will he care for God's church? He must not be a recent convert, or he may become puffed up with conceit and fall into the condemnation of the devil. Moreover, he must be well thought of by outsiders, so that he may not fall into disgrace, into a snare of the devil.
Sure.
So the standard, I always say the standard is the same for every single Christian. I think this applies to every single Christian, but the enforcement of the standard applies much more to someone like Matt Chandler, who's a pastor, who's a senior pastor of a big church, who's leading a lot of people. I think this he's held to a higher standard than the people in his congregation, and I think that's why when unbelievers look at the situation, they think, what is wrong with him? He didn't actively cheat on his wife, or he didn't do anything wrong. It's like, okay, he didn't do anything wrong, but when I read this, he is aspiring to the office of overseer.
Yeah.
And overseer is held to a higher standard.
Yeah.
And that's why. It's because of this. So.
Sure. Quick break from today's episode. We would love to take this moment to thank you for watching this episode thus far. There's still more to come, so hang in there. But we just wanted to remind you that we are on all the social media platforms that matter: Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Go follow us there, leave comments down below, do all the things. Get in touch with us, because it's the community that matters.
Yes, and the best way to support us is not necessarily buying the merch, although we do encourage you to do that. It is to share this episode with your friends and your family. And every single other episode that we've ever recorded, go there, hit the share button, share it with your friends and the family. And now the next part of the episode that John alluded to just now. And that's why I think the elders of his church is doing a fantastic job in applying First Timothy to this situation. Even though he didn't do anything wrong, the situation is he definitely fails somewhere in here. Yeah. If I just read it, the situation. Now, like his own, and I think we should clarify this, I don't think we clarified this, but like his own elders has also said, this is not a disqualification. He's not removed from the church. He's just been placed on a leave of absence, where I assume they will be ministering to him privately in counseling sessions, like you said, and where he's going to be growing and stuff for a time, and then the plan is to obviously bring him back as the lead pastor, because
for sure, I think the way they've handled it is pretty great, and like you mentioned, according to that scripture, on some level he definitely falls short. But I want to even just address the issue of, let's assume he wasn't aspiring for the office of overseer. Let's even for a moment assume he wasn't even a member of a church, but he was married and he was having that conversation. And this comes down to the title of the video. It's not particularly Dear Christian Men, it's Dear Men. All of y'all got to do better. And look, that goes for women as well, to be clear. That's not we're actually not feminists. Surprising. It goes for women as well, do better. But the point is, let's hold each other to a higher standard. let's draw the lines clearer and sooner than what we've been doing. Because here's my concern, right? Sure, I've got so many other things I want to say, but I'm going to try and remember all of them, and we'll get to them.
I'll move my mic away, and then you can just speak.
Let's first tackle this. All of us need to be very, very cautious of judging somebody like Matt Chandler. Because falling into the trap of infidelity is not something that happens. I don't avoid the trap today and then count myself clear next week.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing battle. And the problem with a thing like this, and this is why I believe they're doing a good job at handling it, is that conversation could have been as innocent as anything. But every day, something chips away at your own conviction. Now, I'm pretty sure Mr. Matty Boy has done some sermons before on being faithful to your wife and being a godly husband. I'm almost certain of it, and I'm almost 100% certain where his conviction stands on the matter. But slowly but surely, there's a chipping away of that conviction and a dulling of one's conscience, whether you're a Christian or not. Doesn't matter. It happens over time, and you fight the fight every day until you don't. And it's that one day that you don't that just bites you in the donkey. Just comes and bites you in the donkey.
See what you did there. Yeah. No, I agree. I think, I love it, but that's why I love his words that he also said in the video, because I watched the video. And what he said was the conversation was unguarded.
Yeah. And that's so important.
Yeah.
For him to acknowledge that and be willing to be open about it, call it what it is, and grab control of it again and direct himself.
Yeah.
Place himself under the authority of the leadership of the church. And I think, like, kudos to the guy. I'm super impressed.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I think if you are watching this and thinking, what is the big deal? All the and I say this with confidence. Obviously, I don't know this, but I say this with confidence. But all the other instances of infidelity in the church started with these kinds of conversations.
Absolutely. I'm sure of it.
If you think of what happened in Hillsong, the story goes, they started speaking. And it started innocently. There was no romantic inclination or sexual nature of the conversation.
Yeah.
They were just chatting. What's the big deal? But it led to something bigger because it was left unguarded.
Absolutely.
And that's why the words that he used is I like the words that he used. It was unguarded and unwise because the potential was there.
And to all my married peeps out there, I think that we can all pretty much agree that it's not easy to keep your guard up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I think it's something that, it's asked of you in marriage, and that's what sort of makes marriage so, what's the word I'm looking for? It's daunting before you get there. It's super daunting. At least it was for me, because I understood the commitment I was making. This is till death do us part, and I believe that, and I'm convicted of it. But here's the thing: as much as I can say that now on this podcast, and I can say that I will never cheat on my wife, and I know my wife will never cheat on me, man, I can't judge a guy like this for being in that position, because it is a constant guarding of yourself, guarding of your tongue, guarding of your heart, guarding of your spouse. And it's I want to say it's effort, but I don't mean effort
it's
some
not a
people
dra-
are
it's
going to
not
be
a
like,
drag.
oh, I love my wife. It's not an effort for me. Yeah, no, I hear you. But what I mean is it's a constant attention. It requires your focus all the time. And some people might disagree with me on that. I don't know. But I think this is part of the process of being honest with ourselves as well. You know, I think that he was able to be honest with himself and say this was unguarded and that's unsafe. That's not good because I let my attention fade somewhat. And I think there's an essence of being honest with ourselves. And for me, I take my commitment to my marriage incredibly, incredibly seriously, to the point where I would say, and I would say publicly on a podcast, I'd say privately in conversation, that I would lay down my life for my wife. But I'm very careful to not let that statement make me lazy. Because I've got that conviction. And as I sit here, I've got that conviction. But sometimes that very conviction can make one lazy. Because you're like, I know I'm safe. I know the commitment I've made. I know the conviction I've got. I can engage in this friendly dialogue with somebody and be totally above board and be totally okay with it. But it starts chipping away, which is potentially what was going to happen in this case. We can't say for sure, but almost certainly what has happened in other cases.
Yeah.
And therefore, on grounds of that, when I say things like I'm convicted of this and I'm certain of it and this is my stance, I say so very thoughtfully because I never want to get to a point where it becomes a thing I say, but that I'm not actually actively, consciously mindful of and the implications of that. That means every moment of every day I have a guard up and I'm paying attention to this issue.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I guess I've just said a bunch of obvious stuff and just elaborated on it too much, but welcome to the But I Don't Know podcast. It's what I do.
Now, obviously, with this said, there's the extreme to the other side as well, where you completely alienate yourself from all the, from any type of friendly relationship with anyone else.
Yeah.
Which isn't healthy either.
Absolutely.
And I think that distinction needs to be made. We're not saying that a married man can't be friends with another woman.
Yeah.
We're not saying that.
Yeah.
We're saying if you do choose to be friends, be careful. Just check yourself.
Absolutely.
Before you wreck yourself.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Yo. But yeah, ultimately
Absolutely.
that's what it comes down to, because also, like in this case, I know that they stand strongly for brother-sister relationship, brothers, and that
Friendships.
means friendships. That means fellowship. That means like in our context, having a braai every once in a while.
Yeah.
But it cannot be the frequent communication.
Yeah.
Every single day. There needs to be some boundaries.
Absolutely.
Set in place, and those boundaries could look different for each individual. That's for, I would say, that's for the married couple.
Yeah.
To discuss and to figure out
and being somewhat honest with yourself. Like, if I'm honest with myself, I'm able to step back and ask myself, am I being guarded?
Yeah.
Am I guarding myself now? Or am I chipping away at this conviction of mine, at these boundaries I've placed in my own life? And for every guy, that might look very different, Also, some people come from a history, for instance, of being ladies' men. That's not my case. At least I don't think so. You'd have to probably ask my wife what her impression of me was when she met me. But, I've never had like a string of women that are interested in me and stuff like that. So I can't speak on behalf of somebody who's been in that sort of past. But I can only imagine that for a person like that, it's 10 times more difficult
Yeah.
because the advances, I don't have to ward off advances every day, which is super helpful. Because,
Yeah.
I need to watch myself.
Yeah.
And watching myself is easy. Watching other people is not so easy.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically all I'm saying is I can imagine how different it is for different people, For some people, they're potentially warding off advances constantly, and other people
I would
not.
say, especially people like Matt Chandler, who's put in this position of
For sure.
authority.
Yeah.
That's something that's attractive.
Jet black hair, strong jawline. No, I'm
Nike sneakers, jeans,
hilarious.
preaching fire.
yeah, that helps.
But that is something that's that's attractive.
Yeah.
It's an attractive quality. It's like this is a leader.
Yeah,
This is someone who will be able to lead.
it's got confidence.
And
Yeah.
provider, and like
Sure.
these are things that's attractive.
Yeah.
And someone who's in his position. That's why I think sometimes these celebrity pastors do fall in these traps.
Yeah.
Because people see them and they're like,
Yeah.
wow, like I would, if there's someone who I would like to know,
Yeah.
it's that person.
That guy. Yeah. For
Because
sure.
he's preaching in a church with 3,000 people in every Sunday.
Yeah.
And if I can get to know that guy, that's,
Yeah.
that's something to be desired. And
Sure.
I mean, I can totally get why it's difficult for someone who's leading a mega church,
Yeah.
which is one of the reasons why I'm not quite comfortable with the concept of a mega church.
But that's a good way to take this conversation, because that's one of the things I wanted to say earlier when I said I have so much to say. Is so we've kind of spoken just about the general, let's have a higher standard. Gentlemen, let's have a higher standard for
Yes.
ourselves. Let's not be overly flirtatious, and let's not open ourselves up to multiple relationships with women, and let's guard ourselves, guys. So we've sort of had that conversation. But I've got some strong opinions about the state of the church at the moment in this regard. When you told me about this story, my heart broke a little bit, because, the church of late has been riddled with cases in the last, say, 10 years of two things. Firstly, infidelity of some sort, or at least accusations thereof. And obviously we understand accusations.
Not all of them, yeah.
Yeah, but that scripture in Timothy does say we should be above reproach. I just want to put that out there. So it should be easy to debate those accusations.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be difficult.
Yeah.
Anyway, which is one of the things I think that Matty is slightly guilty of in this case. The leadership probably read those messages and they were like, listen, if these messages got out to the world, they would be able to accuse you and you wouldn't be able to be clear and say, no, that's not the case. And in a sense, I sort of pray that those messages never see the light of day in terms of being made public, because I think they're handling it well. And I think that if people do see those messages, the accusations are going to begin probably. It's just, I guess.
The accusations is there.
Yeah.
There are people who are demanding the church of releasing because they believe that this was a case of infidelity.
Yeah,
they believe that this is like they're hiding something.
Yeah.
They're hiding something. So there are these people.
Anyway, yeah. So I believe that we've seen a lot of these cases, and then another thing we've seen a lot of is celebrity Christians, not necessarily pastors, but celebrity Christians forsaking the faith. We've seen these two things happening over and over and over and over again, and it doesn't seem to be changing. Now, I've got an opinion. I was talking to my wife earlier today, and if we look back at the history of church, there's some things that the church did that they are absolutely guilty of, and Christians today would categorize it and be like, that's not what Christianity is about. We're not supposed to be doing things like that.
Like the Crusades.
100%. Like every Christian alive today looks at the Crusades and thinks, what the heck were you guys thinking?
Yeah.
You're so dumb.
Yeah.
Were you reading the Bible?
Yeah.
Well, no. But but we all look back at that and unanimously agree there was something deeply wrong with the Institute of Church in that season. Martin Luther saw that there was something deeply wrong, and majority of Christians today respect Martin Luther for seeing that and for calling it out and for bringing some sort of reformation. I am of the opinion that we're heading in the direction very speedily to a church culture that people will look back on in hundreds of years' time, assuming we're still here, and look back on and be like, there was something fundamentally
Mental.
there was something fundamentally wrong with the culture of church in 2022. And I believe it's deeply rooted at this point. It's not something we're going to go to our church here in Newcastle and start solving. This is deeply rooted in church culture, and specifically mega church culture. I'm willing to concede that.
Whether it's prosperity or
reformed
or whatever.
100%.
Yeah.
It's very much. But having said that, I mean, locally here in Newcastle, within the last 10 years, there's been at least one case of a pastor falling into a wrong relationship with a woman. It's happening at a local level in every denomination. And
Yeah.
But here's the thing: is I believe in 100 years, 200 years, the Christians then are going to look back at the church of 2022 and this era, and they're going to be like, yes, there was an institutional problem. There was an actual problem. And the benefit, in some way, I envy them, because they're going to have hindsight and they're going to know exactly what the problem is. And as I sit here today, I can't tell you what it is. I don't know what the root is, and I don't know how to fix it. But I can see that there's brokenness infecting the church at a rate that it should not be.
Yeah.
We're lowering our standards every step of the way.
Yeah.
We're not preaching about accountability and transgression and sin nearly as much as we should be. And I'm not saying this is the problem.
Yeah.
I'm saying this might be part of the symptoms where we're avoiding holding people to a biblical standard unless they're in an eldership position.
Yeah.
You know, our church membership structures are flimsy at best. You know, our relationships with majority of our congregation members are somewhat non-existent as leaderships of churches, and I'm seeing this, and it's snowballing. And I don't think that this circumstance with Matt Chandler or Brian Houston or Bill Hybels, I believe, was accused not so long ago, I don't think that these are isolated circumstances. I think that there is a cause happening. I think there's a cultural issue with whether it be our preaching, whether it be our structures, whether it be our doctrine. I'm not too sure what it is.
Yeah, I think, where there's a lack of accountability, there will always be these cases.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of part of the root problem, is that there's no real, well, let's take this instance for instance, this situation for instance.
Yeah.
We saw accountability at play.
Yeah, for sure.
And a case of potential infidelity was stopped.
Yeah.
Because of the accountability, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
This could be an instance where the church handled an issue like this in the right way.
Yeah.
In preventing the pastor from falling.
You're right, for sure.
And safeguarding him.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that this is... It's like they say, it's not just disciplinary.
Yeah.
It's not just the punishment that
Yeah.
their focus was really to reach him and to, the elders doing their job, going to him, Matt, are you okay?
Yeah.
What is happening? So, like, what has caused this? Let's get to the root of the issue. And it's because I think, and this is, it's a cliche thing, but I think people forget that pastors are human.
Yeah.
Pastors are people who are sinful just as anyone else and prone to falling. That's why there should be elders in the church.
Absolutely.
Checking up on the pastor, I would say on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Checking, is everything okay? Like, is there something, I'm not saying that they should go through their phones and
Fingerprint, please.
Yeah, do those sorts of things. But there should be a sort of structure where the elders go to the pastor regularly, making sure that the pastor is still on track with what Paul said to Timothy.
Yeah.
Making sure that they are still above reproach.
And in some sense, I think there's possibly a little bit of a red flag in many church structures at the moment, and that is that some church structures place the senior pastor as ultimate authority. Everything the church does surrounds the pastor, and whether or not it's written in like the Constitution or not, in practice, that's how it ends up working.
Yeah.
And I think it's super dangerous.
Yeah.
I think the eldership, the way the Bible describes eldership and accountability and these things are so important. And honestly, I believe that those people, those men who form the elders, personally, I believe that they are actually the ones responsible for running the church, in a sense. When I say running, we can debate what that means. But ultimately, this kind of thing, they should have absolute autonomy within the eldership group to make these decisions and do so unhindered by the pastor's influence and ability to rally a crowd behind him, for instance.
Yes.
And he should be completely submissive to that authority.
To that, yeah. And that's sort of my problem with like a mega church setup.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because in a mega church setup, what's different about a local church with, say, 150 members every Sunday, which is still a big church, but the difference between that type of church and a church that draws in like 5,000 people every single Sunday is the influence of the pastor plays a bigger role in the decision making of the elders than in the local church.
Yeah.
So I can almost guarantee you that there were many internal discussions surrounding this Matt Chandler thing, how to handle it, and I would not be surprised if someone put it on the table to say we shouldn't make a big deal out of this.
Yeah.
We should work with him
this
behind
is Matt,
the scenes.
guys.
Yeah. Because the impact, and you could see it in the statement, because at the end, I chuckled when I read the last part of the statement, because the last part of the statement is basically is saying, we know that this could be difficult for the congregant members, and if any of you need counseling, please contact.
Yeah.
And I thought of it, and it's funny, but it's sad how much influence a mega church pastor has on the congregant, on the congregation, and how much influence has on decision making from the elders. Yeah. So again, I commend them for handling it the way that they did. Yeah. Not being persuaded by the influence that Matt has. Yeah.
Well, I think that potentially one of the tests of this relationship between pastor and eldership should be go to the average congregation member and ask who the authority is in the church. Because the reason why they probably had to make that statement is because probably most of the congregation members don't actually realize that the elders are the ones in the background who have authority over these kinds of things. And they are going to be, they're going to have some questions, and they're going to be taken aback by the fact that
Who are these guys saying that?
yeah. Somebody's above Matt Chandler. Huh? He's the guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
He's the guy I look up to and the guy I look to for guidance. And in some way, that in itself is a bit of a problem. The congregation members should be well acquainted with the elders because, firstly, I do believe that the congregation should be choosing those elders. But that's a conversation maybe for a different day. And I'm willing to give on that. You know, if there's some other process in your church, so be it. But my preference is that the congregation picks those people based on their merit as Christians and based on their qualification according to the scriptures and based on their reputation within the community. And so they should be so well acquainted with those people that they have chosen and entrusted to take good care of them. That when the statement gets made, the people say, "Thank you, elders, for doing what we've appointed you to do. This is exactly why you're there. And we have no questions for you. Thank you."
Well, I think that's an indication that, you know, the people, it's like you say. I think that sometimes, and it's not necessarily the pastor's fault. Like, I don't think this is Matt's fault for having this influence. I think it's
100%.
You know, it's just the nature of the megachurch beast.
That's why I say, like, in 100 years, hindsight is going to be like, there's where we got it wrong. Whoops.
Yep.
But today, I don't know what it is. It's definitely not Matt's fault. It's not Brian Houston's fault. Well, look, their sin is their fault. But what I'm saying is this institutional problem with the church is not their fault.
Absolutely.
Even if we were to argue, let's say we went back in time and we found some pastor who was responsible for the first mega church. I don't know who it might be. Some dude in the comments might be like, we always speak about the dude in the comments. I love it. Because
Pity Jan Fourie had the first mega church.
Even if we went back to that guy and we wanted to put the blame on him, we can't.
I don't think.
Because he should have had an eldership board. The congregation, to some degree, is more responsible for it than he is. Because they allowed this to continue unhindered without letting the systems be what they're supposed to be, in a sense. You know?
And look, in no way am I saying that a mega church is evil or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is the nature of a mega church, I would almost say by definition of what a mega church is a bit flawed. Like, the structure of a mega church will always be flawed because of, like, the pastor's influence, for instance, and the way the people see the pastor, like you said, and the way they see the elders, and the way that they see, you know, the deacons, or whatever the case may be, the people who are supposed to surround the pastor and support the pastor and make sure that the pastor's able to teach and healthy and, you know, spiritually good. But it's difficult in a mega church. Is all I'm saying.
But again, I think it definitely branches down, and I say that as a bit of a confirmation of what you're saying, that it's not to say mega church is evil, because we see it happening in smaller churches. But I do believe that root we might find is somewhere within the mega church culture, and that any local congregation who's falling to these kinds of things has been influenced by that culture to some degree. Even if there's only 30 people in the congregation, there's an influence of that structure or an influence of that culture. And I think now, maybe I'm a pessimist. You know, maybe I'm like being all doom and gloom. Oh, the church is heading for another failure.
Are you saying that?
But I kind of feel like we should see this as a little bit of a red flag, and just be like, I almost want to encourage everyone who's listened this far, which probably isn't many people with 54 minutes, and anyone who's listened this far, if you're a Christian and you're plugged into a local congregation, which you should be, anyway, I want to encourage you to take this as a little bit of a warning for your local church. You know, when you go to church on Sunday, whatever church it is you attend, sit back and ask yourself, what can I contribute to help? What can I contribute to help? Now, you are not going to change this culture by yourself. And we're not even suggesting what needs to change because we don't know. But what I am suggesting is it's time we as Christians, it was time long ago, we don't just sit in the chair and be like, oh, that pastor up there has got everything under control. I can sit back here. That's part of the problem. We need to sit in that chair and look around us and say, what can I contribute to make a difference here and to make this church look like the church Christ envisioned when he promised it? Because it's his church. It's not ours. It's not Matt's church.
Yeah.
It's not Brian Houston's church. It's not Bill Hybels' church. It's God's church. And whether you like the church or not doesn't change anything about that.
Yeah.
You are called as a Christian to be there and to be involved there and to do your part, to contribute the best you can, whether it be at your yearly AGM where you put up your hand and say, hey, the Constitution here says this and I'm concerned about that because as a Christian this doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Or whether it be a weekly coffee with a member of your eldership board, or whether it be just interceding and praying for your church on a daily basis. Whatever it is, if you're not doing anything, you're not being part of the body. Do something. Contribute to your church, your local congregation. Do something. Otherwise, stop pointing fingers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's...
I don't know how we've ended up here with the episode, Dear Men, Do Better. And now I'm like, be better, church. Like, men don't make up the church. Anyway.
They make up half the church.
Demographically, I don't know how true that statistic
Whatever,
was.
I'm not going to... Yes.
Awesome. Thank you guys for watching this episode or listening to this episode of the But I Don't Know podcast.
I can't do this anymore.
It's been great. It's been a great discussion. Thank you, JP.
Thank you, John.
For joining us.
My pleasure.
For joining John and JP. That's hilarious. But yeah, jump over to our social network channels, like us, subscribe us.
Sorry, this episode took a little bit longer than our usual 35 minutes.
Yeah. We've got a limit of 35 minutes here at the But I Don't Know podcast, and we never exceeded except for this episode. This is the only one. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Peace out.
Thank you so much for watching that very fascinating episode about that very fascinating topic. We would like to remind you that we've got other fascinating episodes and other fascinating topics on our fascinating website.
Fascinating indeed, JP. We're also on the following social media networks: Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Wow, and we would love it if you would go there right now and comment on any one of them or all three of them if you please.
That would be great. You're amazing. Don't you ever forget that.